Welcome to this webinar hosted by OpenSpatial. The topic of today's webinar is leveraging GIS for campus business operations, essentially focusing on moving from data to solutions. Our guest and presenter is Elizabeth Goetz, who is the GIS specialist at University of Colorado Boulder. And Elizabeth will be looking at and showing live how UCB campus has been able to build off of their GIS data captured in Munsys and use that in Enlighten to link to capital assets and space planning and tying in with campus construction and asset management documents and more. And I'll leave her to go through those details. Just a quick look at some quick facts about University of Colorado Boulder. It's a fairly large campus. It's a campus in the city, and this stuff here in the middle is a summary of the main utilities, buildings, etc. that are maintained in Munsys and used campus-wide through Enlighten. And with that, I'll hand over to Elizabeth to continue the presentation.
Our main GIS portal for staff of facilities management. And as I zoom in here, you see we get better resolution. So what we're looking at is buildings, roads, sidewalks, property lines for the University of Colorado Boulder. And our GIS program really got started about 9 years ago when Eileen, who is my predecessor, really spent a lot of effort correcting what was originally a AutoCAD map of the campus that was not spatially accurate. And so about 9 years later and a few software changes, and now we have a working online web map. So if we mouse over one of our buildings here, you'll see we're getting a tooltip. And if I mouse over one of these little green cameras here, let me refresh my map here really quick. Sorry, we just rebooted the server yesterday, so I'm hoping all my pictures still work. Let me mouse over one of these little cameras. And there should be a little picture there. If I click on the link, we can still get the picture, but it looks like I'm having a little server issue. But we're still getting all of our tooltips from our GIS server. And this may look really simple, but this is actually coming from 2 different servers and being combined here. So the geometry for the building footprints is coming from our GIS database. But all of the data that you're seeing is actually coming from our famous work management database. And how this gets accomplished is that we batch all of the data from our famous database into a table in our GIS, and then we can show it here. So we can see, we've got building 384, and that's our primary key, is the building number. And these links down here actually link directly into our document management system. So if we click on one of these, it'll actually launch us into our Meridian document management system, and it just did a search for every drawing related to that building. And you can see we got about 6,000 results for that one building. All right, if we go back to the map here, we've also got a lot of other layers in here. So let me turn on our grounds layers. I turn on our layers over on the left, and I'm just going to turn on all the grounds layers. So then you can see we're tracking lots of stuff for the grounds department. They've been one of our best clients and one of the ones who've pushed the most for this software. So I turn off our zones here, big boundaries. But you can see we've got plant beds shown here, and if we mouse over that, they'll tell you it's a turf bed, what the square footage is, and that it belongs to facilities. And same thing with this, it's a mulch bed, and we can put pictures in for just about any object on the map. Let's take a look at, we looked at the tooltip here. So if we select one of these objects on the map and then grab our advanced form, there we go. So now we can see that we're getting all of the same information we got in the tooltip In addition, we're also getting our latitude and longitude, a link to our Meridian document management database, building square footage, gross square footage, and we also have this tab here, which is projects on building, and I'll get back to that here in a minute. All right. So we should also take a look at, before I go further, I also want to show you our utility system. I'll go ahead and turn on just a few of our utility layers. This area is really what we call the spaghetti because we have a ton of utilities in there. Let me turn on our water lines here, and let's take a look at steam. And see the same thing here. We also have pictures on some of our steam valves that we can pull up. And we've got a working, mostly complete water network going here. So it's really taken us a while to build out these database connections. And until recently, it's been maybe about a year since we've had Enlighten. And since then, in maybe the last few months, we've really built out these database connections, pulling data from Famous and linking to data in our Meridian database. And as I mentioned with our Meridian database, that took us, gosh, close to 3 years with a whole staff of students populating that to get all of our documents into that system so that we have something there to link to. Looks like a very simple connection to get all that data in here onto our building footprints. But let's take a look at, we've got our space planning data here, and this is currently in construction. Let me zoom in on our Center for Community. If I do that, I'm going to turn on our space planning layers, and I've got a whole set of layers over here on the left. And you can see I've got rooms by category checked, and turn on space planning here. We just got all the rooms for this entire building all at once. And you can see it looks a little crazy right now, and that's because everything is turned on for the whole building. So let me grab our layer filter here. There we go. I'm going to select a filter and look at rooms by category. And we're going to set it to be first floor. And hit OK. Now we're only looking at the first floor of the Center for Community. And if I mouse over this, you can see that it's telling us that that space is on the first floor. The room number is F155, that we've got about 4,000 square feet, and that it belongs to our housing food service group. Now, all of this data is actually populated through Famous CAD, which is another software that runs on top of AutoCAD, and it provides an interface between AutoCAD and our Famous database. So all of our space data is actually going through AutoCAD, Famous CAD, Famous, and then we're batching that information out of the Famous server and back into our GIS database and creating some geometry here. And in order to get the geometry to match all the data to, we're actually XREFing our AutoCAD floor plans into a campus map and then georeferencing all of those XREFs and then using that data to give it base points to pull the geometry out of the AutoCAD files into the GIS, and then matching that back together with the Famous data. So it comes out as a map that looks fairly straightforward, and you've got polygons and data, but it really took a lot of manipulating and batching back and forth to get all this data into something that we can quickly do this, reset, and let's look at the second floor. Okay. And we've got all the space for that building. So you can see that some of these are still blank. That's because we're still in the process of populating these. But soon we hope to have all the spaces on campus, and Colin's been a huge help in programming all kinds of things in the back end to help us get that to work. We've also got our site plans. We've only just started doing this.
Liz, I do have a request online. Could you put the mic a little closer? I think it's a little soft for some folks.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anything you'd like me to repeat? I'm sorry if you can't hear me.
No, I think it was just soft as all. And then the other
Okay.
question is kind of just backing up a little. Where did the data come from, and how did you create what do you use to capture that data, and then how does that get onto the map here?
Sure. So a lot of our data has come from really a variety of sources. For the grounds layers, that really came after we corrected our base map. So a lot of our data has come from the process of correcting the campus map. And that really took a whole process of having base points surveyed on campus and then manually correcting what were AutoCAD drawings to make them align with where things are in space, in reality. So that took a lot of effort to really get all of that information correct. And once we got the base map correct, then we could start populating more data on top of that, such as our grounds layers. So these layers, some of them came from tracing on the base map. The grounds guys would say, oh yeah, over here in Kittredge, these are all fields, they're all turf. That's easy. But for some of these areas in here where it gets more complicated down around the buildings, our grounds crews actually went out with paper maps and marked them up and measured and pretty much did a whole campus survey over the course of a couple of years to get this data for the grounds layers in here. And you can see actually with our tree data that we have trees on the north side of the road here, but we don't have any trees on the south side, or very few. And that's because that's sort of the edge of our survey. And the grounds crews have been going out with GPS equipment with a laser rangefinder and capturing data on all of our trees. And for that, typically we set up with a tripod, on the sidewalk, usually, or in the dirt, about, you'd want to try not to be on the north side of buildings, and this is not a great spot for that, which is probably why we don't have a lot of tree data in here. But you want to set up with the tripod with the GPS antenna and a laser rangefinder, and then you can collect all the trees down a row or in an area, and then we get data that looks like this. Mouse over that. And we can also do things with our tree data. Let me turn these off. And we've got another one in here called tree canopy. And if I turn these on, these are actually showing the canopy spread of all of our trees. And that's based on the measurements that were taken by the grounds crews that have been doing this. And it's really been two guys, especially with a third helping, that have collected all of this tree data for about 4,500 trees. Let's see. For some of our other data, let's take a look at the cone zone map. And cone zone is what we've been calling our campus construction map. Let's go back over here. And I'll turn this on. There we go. So now we're looking at all of the construction on our campus. Let's see. So the buildings with the hatch pattern on them, those are buildings that have projects in them. So this data is all coming from our famous projects database. It's entered by our project managers and project coordinators as the project happens. So when we mouse over one of these building footprints, these really came from the original base map, most of them. Mouse over that, it's now telling us we've got 9 projects going on in the library. It's a big building. And that we've got maybe 7 different project managers working in there. And if we want to see a more detailed list of all those projects, we can click on that, get our little advanced form here. Back on Enlighten. Thanks for being patient with me here.
So just the login there, you're using single sign-on, so your campus login will automatically then also log you into Enlighten. How many folks do you have on Enlighten across campus?
Oh, we're running about 160 users right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're hoping to expand that. So right now we've got almost 100 just in facilities management, and that includes grounds and our service shops, as well as planning, design, and construction. We also have users over in the police departments, campus safety, environmental health and safety, and in the student admissions, actually, because they need to know where the construction is, and that's been a huge thing for us, is mapping construction impacts. Because as you can see, there's a lot going on here. Can you guys see the map again, Colin? Is that working all right?
Yep, it looks good.
Good, good. So this purple line on the map is actually where the welcome tours go for new students. And, the blue line is tours, and the purple line is the welcome routes, usually for new students. So as you can see, those get impacted by construction a lot. So they need to know when things are going to be blocking those routes so that they can schedule tours for new students coming to the campus, and areas that they want to avoid if they want to, make the campus look good for new prospective students. Let's try that again. Let's look at Norland Library. If we click on that and launch our little advanced form here, we should get a list. There we go. There's my list. So we got a list of 9 projects in here. So if you were a project manager and you wanted to see who else is working in the same building as you, and we've had this happen with so many projects and so many project managers, that we will get multiple project managers working in the same area within weeks of each other, which is very frustrating for the users. So this has been really great for us to coordinate between project managers, because you can quickly look and see who else is in your building, and in the description what they'll be working on. So if we look at this one down here, description, doing storefronts for special collections. And there's a whole list of projects going on in this building. Now, apart from buildings, we're also showing site projects, and I'm going to turn the buildings off for a minute. So you can see we've got these big polygons on the map. These are also really important. Sidewalk closures and road closures here are a huge deal. They cause a lot of trouble for a lot of our both staff and students, people who commute to campus. So you can see here, this one, now that we're only looking at one project, when we mouse over it, we'll get one project number and get a much more detailed description of the impacts of that project. And the same with this one, mouse over that. And I'm going to change the view here. So if we turn on the CP project areas, this is the same data, but now it's actually colored by its construction stage. If I mouse over that one, and these are viewable by different users. That's why there's more information in the tooltips for this layer than there is for the other layer. Now you're seeing project manager start and end dates, as well as a description of those impacts. So this data has really developed from what was a monthly interview process where we had a group of consultants going around interviewing about 50 project managers every month to find out where their projects were, what the impacts were going to be, and what the planned finish date was for those projects. Now we're still doing some of the interviewing just because we have a few stragglers, but now we're getting to the point where project managers will just give us the footprint of their project, and then we pull all the rest of the information from the FAMUS database. So part of the issue we had in the past is that project managers were not entering their data into the FAMUS database, partly because no one had trained them to do it, and no one was enforcing the data entry. And it is, FAMUS, if anyone has used it before, can be a little bit finicky. So we were not getting good data on a lot of our projects. It was really word of mouth when these projects were going to start and stop. And it was very frustrating. Say if you have to work in this building across the street from this big construction, and now the road is closed and you can't get to your building. We had a lot of complaints. This is a huge effort to really improve our communication with the public and to help coordinate not only within our own department, but with other departments on campus. Colin, do you have anything else to add? Is there anything else?
Yeah, we had a question. Let me pull that up. So there's a question about the map from Monty. It says, is this map also serving up the web-based public campus map? And then if so, how and what tools and software? So probably let's start with the beginning. The data that we're seeing here, how do you edit that? And then what systems are you using? And then maybe also address the public map as well.
Absolutely. So we're using the Munsys GIS software to edit our base map. Let me pull that up here. I've got it open in the background. So this looks like a regular AutoCAD drawing with some additional menus. And that's because it's running on top of AutoCAD Maps. So this is OpenSpatial's Munsys GIS. So you can see this is the same map we were just looking at. I'll zoom in here. And if I click on one of these, it's not a regular AutoCAD object. It's got all this data over here associated to it. So say I wanted to change it, I can just go up here to change, or sorry, to lock it, to do that. And now it'll behave similar to an AutoCAD object. I could, move it. I probably shouldn't do that. I'll have someone very annoyed that part of their building is missing. Put that back. But just like AutoCAD, you can, once you've locked an object, you can change it and manipulate it just like very similar to an AutoCAD object. There are a few rules, like you don't want to make closed loops. Like if I, twisted that over here, it won't let me put it over here because the lines cross. But once you've made a change, you just post it back to the database. And the same for changing attributes. It said, I changed one object. I didn't make any attribute changes, a few spatial changes, and post it, and it's back in the database. So, for example, let me look at a layer I don't mind making changes to because no one's going to come with pitchforks if I mess something up. It's really been amazing now that we've published this web map how quickly people notice changes. Sometimes I'll get calls like a couple hours after I changed something and they're like, I noticed this was different. Why did you do that? So I've tried to be fairly transparent with why we make changes because otherwise people start calling me going, why did you do that? That's not right. So let's look at project areas. So these are all queries over here on the left. So if I run project areas, let's just run everything. So there's that project we were just looking at here, Project 87, and it's upcoming. They're going to turn this parking garage into another building. So if we wanted to do a change, let's do change, edit attributes. Let's just put in, let's do testing 1, 2, 3. All right, and let's change this just a little bit. So I'm going to pull this out into this field. And I'm going to post to that. So when I make a change, very quickly, I can go back over to, let's use a different browser. There we go, back over here to Enlighten. Reload the map, and you can see that that object changed. So this is loading in real time. Some of our famous data, for example, the data that shows up on these project areas, if you make a change in famous, this will not change immediately. That's because it's actually a batch process. We run this every night. So it takes up to 24 hours before your changes in famous will show up on the map. If we did have something really important that needed to change immediately, we could force an update. but we really haven't had a reason to do that. So Colin, what was the other part of that question? Sorry, I can't see the questions.
So the question is this a public web map, and if so, what technologies are you using for that?
Right, and we are not currently public. This map is for staff only, and that's because we have a lot of information in here that just shouldn't be available to the public. For example, students don't need to know where the hatches to the tunnels are because they tend to get in them, and things like, gas meters and things like that don't need to be public. We are working on a solution currently with Campus Strategic Communications, because we're actually in facilities management. Strategic Communications is responsible for publishing everything on the public websites and for controlling what is currently our public campus map. We've been petitioning them for a long time to get rid of the campus map solution that they're using, partly because it's very hard to update and no one has updated it, and it's very old and out of date. It's inaccurate, and it's hard to use and nobody uses it. So we're hoping in May to be launching some kind of public solution.
Okay. I think also let me show, so this was the introductory slide. Let me just show the other one. So the technology is your central spatial database that you're editing is being edited through AutoCAD Map and Civil 3D, as you showed, using the Munsys applications over here. And then there's some admin tools for allowing you to set up users and define features and edit columns and all of that. But on the right, the Enlighten, what you've been showing is the web portal, and that's running on MapGuide open source. And so to put it in public, typically what we'd do is put another server on to pull out of the same data set, but have it outside of the DMZ and have limited access to it, and then publish those layers. And they could easily be published in a separate web server. There, and then also connecting other systems, which is what Liz has been showing through either through the application itself or through moving data into the Oracle table. So the Famous is run as an Oracle database at UCB, and so we're literally just scripting out overnight the building information, the project information, and then that's been published in Enlighten. And because that changes on a daily basis is more than sufficient, and we could be linking this live to other data, but as of now we're not doing that. And then the document management system. So just to give an idea of the background of all of this, just to go and take a look at it. There's another question. I said, is the single server setup or multiple servers? And I suppose I should just talk to that while I have this here. So the Oracle database running on one server, the web database running on another. You could be running multiple production versus development servers, and you can also run multiple web servers pointing to one or more Oracle databases. So you can set all of that up as needed, and certainly OpenSpatial has customers that do that. I don't want to focus too much on that, but just thought I'd give the background as to what's in place there. Liz, I wanted to, could you walk through the legend on your map? So let's make you presenter there. And just look back at Enlighten, run through the, if you can share your screen again. And then let's run through, just look at the legend there. Just because there's the redlining stuff that you've got, and then a bunch of, all utilities and projects and things like that.
Yeah, so these redlining layers allow users to draw on the map, and I'll come back and show how that works a little bit. We've got a variety here because most users would not see this many redline layers. The reason we have so many is because primarily the utility group got annoyed that the grounds group was covering up the things they wanted to draw on with their markups, because of course the grounds markups take up a lot more space because they want to draw, this area is turf
So just
versus utility does.
to expand on that, each user login determines what layers you can set up what layers there are. So there's a user management portal, and in Enlighten platform, it's pretty easy for you to assign who has permissions to what there. And so you're logged in as admin, so I think you're seeing everything, right?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot more than most users see.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a few experimental layers in here too, things that are in development that most of our users won't see for a couple more weeks yet. You can see we're seeing outdoor spaces text. That's our green text here, labeling like the quadrangle and some of our plazas. We have building text, which are our building names. Lakes, rivers, athletics lines, buildings, fences, property lines, and roads. So I close the base map. We have our cone zone layers here. These are our campus construction layers that we're looking at now. And these are just different views of the same data. So you can see when I changed that we're getting a slightly different view of this. This top one is actually filtering by the date that the project says it's going to be active. We don't use this as our primary layer at the moment, mostly because we're still having issues with project managers putting accurate dates into the database. That's a whole other problem. So we're working that out currently. And you saw our buildings with projects, and this is really a database view combining our building footprints with the project data coming from Famous. See, and we've got all of our routes, which we looked at before. And we do have some other routes in here that are not turned on. For example, we have commencement. We only turn that on close to graduation. And we've got some other pedestrian detours. And we decided these should be turned off most of the time, mostly because they change pretty frequently. But the welcome route and the tour routes are pretty consistent. We have a, let me turn off the cone zone. Are you going to add something, Colin?
Yeah, when you say something is off, it could be toggled so that by default it's not displaying, but it's still available, and then you also have control as to whether it's available or not. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so you can see these future projects. This layer is not checked. That means it's off, not showing at this moment. But if I check that, then all of these layers that are checked will turn on. So these are all the future projects that are planned on campus. And you can turn these off. Let's just look at next year. Oh, we're actually looking at last year, 2016. So now we're just looking at 2016 projects. This we created to help different user groups figure out where other groups are planning projects so that they can coordinate. For example, we've got at least 3 different groups that are saying they want to redo this part of this road or tear it up for some reason. So this project is actually tunnel work and running chilled water, so they'll probably have to dig up this street. So they shouldn't replace the street until after they've dug it up for the chilled water. And that's something that tends to happen around here. It's sort of a running joke that we dig up the same piece of sidewalk twice. But we try not to do that. So this map is really helping project managers figure out where other projects are happening and who they can partner with to better accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. And we already looked at our grounds layers. We've got a whole set of layers in there. So we've got trees. We also have tree stumps and removed trees. Tree stumps we like to map because our grounds guys will go back and then grind the stumps, and they do that twice a year. And we're also starting to map site furniture, including benches. We only have a few in here right now. Let's turn that on. If I zoom in here, we've just started to map benches, and those have equipment numbers and actually maintenance tracking attached to those that eventually we will be connecting to the database. It's not a live connection yet. Let me turn off our grounds layers here. We've got our whole utility layer set, And we have about 14 utilities on campus. They get broken down into these groups. We have subgroups under telecom, and I think that's the majority. Oh, we count tunnels as part of our utilities sometimes, and that adds up to 14.
Can
So
you
we
just
turn these
can you
on.
just turn them all on? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if
And
you
because of
right
that,
mouse button on the top group, it turns them all on. You has an option to turn them all on as well.
well, I don't want to turn everything on.
No, just the utilities group.
There we go. So this is why we call this area the spaghetti. And because this is a live connection, typically we tell our users, zoom into the area you're interested in before you turn everything on, because it is loading live from the database, which is great because you get changes immediately, which is important to us. But if I was looking at the whole campus map and turned all the utilities on, it would take a minute for it to load everything, just because we have a lot of data in here. So you can see we've got tons of chilled water lines in here, and if we mouse over these all have tooltips on them too. That'll tell you that's a sewer node. And there's a whole set of layers under each one of these with all the symbology in here for water lines and valves. Let's see, let's look at steam here. Steam is hot pink. So you can see we've got all of our symbols built out for all of our utilities. And you see these really dense areas. Let me turn this on. We'll collapse some of these. The reason we have all these collapsed most of the time is we have so many layers in here at this point that if we had everything expanded out, it's really hard to work with. So we try to only expand out things that need to be expanded from the beginning, and then let the users expand what they need to see. And we do a little training when we first bring on users to show them the capability of all the tools and what layers there are. At this point, we actually can't cover all the layers that we have in a 1-hour training because there are just too many. So I always tell all of our users to go in, play with it. You can't break it. They can't actually make changes to the database for the most part. So let's turn on our tunnels here. So you can see these really dense areas of utilities actually align with our utility tunnels. I'll turn these off. So now we have our utility tunnels on here. We have these set up with a single connection to our Meridian document management system. So if I click on that, it's actually going to load the tunnel detail drawing. And for some reason it thinks I'm not allowed to see it, but it loaded. There we go. So now we've got a section of that tunnel, a plan of that tunnel in a 100-foot section, and a lateral section of that tunnel. So you can see we've got callouts for where all the pipe hangers are inside that tunnel. So for each tunnel section, we have one of these drawings, and it's a direct connection from the map to the document management system. Let's see. So that was our utility pathways. We also have started mapping access points. So you can see this little green hatch here. And we also have, in some places, ventilation benches. I think there's some up here on the quad. But we do have big grates. There we go. And ventilation benches. And there's one ventilation bench. And accesses. And we've also started mapping doors. So these pink spaces are actually spaces inside of our buildings. These are mechanical rooms, typically. But in some places, the tunnels actually intersect those. So if we go down to, let's zoom out here. We're going to go over to Kittredge, which is one of our housing complexes. And if we zoom in here, we have a whole series of crawl spaces that actually interconnect all of these buildings. Look through the rest of the legends. Tunnels. We also have an underground other layer. If we zoom back up here. And this is actually marking things that are underground and unusual. Things that you need to be aware of if you're going to dig. So this is actually a 10-inch reinforced concrete slab that's underneath this plaza. It was put in to prevent slumping of the soil when this building goes about 4 stories underground. So when they backfilled, they poured this slab on top. And it got forgotten that this was out here. So we wanted to make sure it shows up on the map. And we have a whole series of pictures and diagrams. Let's find a good picture here. And a whole set of descriptions. So this is what that slab looks like underneath the plaza. And that's what that layer is here for, is just to mark things that project managers especially should be aware of when they go out to dig. We have a whole set of emergency management layers. We've just started developing these. Emergency management has just recently become very interested in using our GIS. So we're mapping all the doors on the buildings, access points. And part of the reason we're doing this is because some of our doors, especially on the old buildings, have manual locks, and those get locked and unlocked by our security services. And they're also, we want to locate those so that we can replace them with key locks, or with card locks in the future. We also have our Safe Pathways initiative showing up on this map. These are areas where we have a certain set lighting that has to be a certain brightness, and also security phones and other safety precautions are taken on these routes to make sure that there's always a safe and well-lit feeling path on campus for students. So if you're walking, from a restaurant up here, this area up here is what we call the Hill, and it's where a lot of the fraternity houses and restaurants and things are. So we want to make sure that there's a safe path for students from the Hill to their dormitories and back and through all the classroom sections. So that's what this pathway is about, and it's mostly concerned with lighting. We also have a whole set of flood layers in here. Let me turn these off. So if I turn this on, this is the flood zones from the 2013 floods that we had here in Boulder. So we can see where the creek overflowed, where are areas of concern moving into the future. And it also helps our project managers know if they are going to build in certain areas that they need to take precautions for floodwaters in the future. And a lot of our layers have really developed based on what our users have asked for. So project managers and grounds group have been very active with asking for things in the map. And just recently, the police department and the security services have started really developing their set of layers. So pretty much everything that we provide is customizable based on what our users need. So we've got a whole set in here of health and safety. So they've tested for West Nile. We've got our stormwater basins in here. Parking lots, which are currently getting developed with parking services. So if we go over here, turn on our parking lots, there's all our parking lots by type. And we've also started calling out ADA parking spaces and doing parking lines. And this will help parking services be able to say that there are 50 spaces available in this lot for move-in, say, or for campus events. A lot of times parking gets reallocated. It's very important. We have a hardscapes layer that we're currently developing. There's not much in there right now. A whole set of transportation layers that include bus routes and bus stops. Let's see. Snow maps is a big deal. These are maps of who clears snow, where, and when. So this is very colorful. But what this is showing is that all the pink is our facilities management group, the red is housing, and the blue is parking. So between them, they clear all of this area of snow. And we have layers in here. This is the extreme priority map. So this says, in emergency conditions, what areas do we need to clear first? And you can see that this is in development. because there should be connections between these. But all of these buildings that are colored are high priority. Snow maps. Oh, we haven't looked even at our imagery yet. So we have 6-inch resolution aerial imagery for the whole campus. If we zoom in here, you can actually see students out on the field. There we go. And so these are living on our Enlighten server and being loaded into the map. So Colin helped us set that up. And we turn these off. We also have a black and white. And we have the 2010 of the same image. And you can see that's actually a little bit lower resolution because we're getting a little bit fuzzy around the edges there. All right, we have our Street View layers. This is actually, if I zoom out here, this is essentially a map of where the Google van has driven on our campus. Based on, if you go to Google Maps, you can see the blue lines where they've driven the Google van, and they have Street View available. So if you mouse over one of these cameras, it'll go to this spot in Google and load up Street View. All right. I don't know what's going on with our internet today, but I think most of you are familiar with Google Maps or Bing Maps. Same concept. That'll launch you right into the Street View. Let's see. This one down here is our ADA accessibility map. This is also currently in development. These green lines are all the lines that are wheelchair accessible based on slope and cross slope. And then all the red lines right now are mostly areas where there are stairs or the sidewalk is damaged in some way. All the blue hasn't been populated yet, so you can see that we're still in construction here. And that layer, that layer is not available to any of our users yet. It should be available probably the first week in February. We looked briefly at the space planning layers, and we also have a whole set of site plans. So we just started doing this, and if I go, let's go to Baker Hall. Let's turn these on. We've got, let's see, let's just turn on, I think there's some in landscape, chilled water, drainage. So these are actually plans that have been geo-referenced to the campus map. So these are single sheets. If we click on one of these, we'll load that up. This is a stormwater drawing. Let's open that up. Yeah. There we go. So this is the stormwater drawing for Baker Hall with the plan and profile for those storm lines. And it's geo-referenced to this area. We actually had a really interesting conversation with the University of Michigan because they do something similar, geo-referencing some of their site plans. But what they do is they only show, this plan refers to this area here, so they would only show that area on their map. Whereas we've chosen to show this whole little boundary here. So this is actually showing the edges of the sheet, and this area is the area that actually relates to our site plan. The reason we've chosen to do this is if we decide to bring those drawings back into AutoCAD, we need to have all 4 corners of the sheet located in order to accurately geo-reference the sheet back onto an AutoCAD map. And if we get rid of those corners, we just lose the geo-reference. We could show, this area, this smaller area on the map, but we couldn't reload the sheet into our GIS backgrounds in AutoCAD here. Now, it's not something we do very often, but it is something that we want to have the ability to do should we ever need to.
Okay. Well, thanks, Liz. I think you've gone all the way through the legend. There are a couple of questions, and so we can take a look at those. Here's a question. It says, are equipment assets tracked in the system? Meaning, can you pinpoint where capital equipment is located? And does inventory management use this system?
Currently, inventory management does not use this system. They use the famous database, and what they actually do is, let's go over to C4C, and I'm going to turn on the space planning layer here. All right. What they do is they actually use the room numbers, and the room numbers exist in the famous database. So they associate their equipment with a room number. So let's go 03, load that. So they can say, you know, they have this piece of equipment in room S355, for example. And we do have room numbers associated with crawl spaces, outdoor spaces, tunnels, and attics and mechanical spaces and roofs. But we don't count a lot of those spaces into the gross square footage of our buildings. So we actually prefix all the numbers of non-gross square footage space with special characters, like they start with a Y, to say that this is not part of the gross square footage of the building, but we need the room number to exist so that we can assign equipment to it. So the famous database really relies on you identifying your spaces, and then you can associate equipment to those spaces.
So can they go from the map on a room number and get to the famous data?
Not currently.
Okay, and
The
then
way
the other way around would
set
be
up,
to go into famous and be able to zoom to the location from there. So those are still things we need to set up.
Yep, and actually asset management hasn't been one of the groups that have been involved with us. So basically, we spend most of our effort sort of on the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So the people who are willing to come in and tell us what they're looking for are the ones who get attention first. And asset management is doing okay using the famous system at this time, and so they haven't wanted to invest time in developing the GIS side of it. But I do believe that very soon we will be working with them.
Right. A couple other questions. One was, do the utilities have elevation data as well? Maybe I can just take that one. So the Munters product has all of those as columns that are stored as explicit data, so invid elevations and all of that, and elevation of any point. And I think you're busy building some of that out, but it wasn't that complete. As you mentioned, you're doing it in a prioritized fashion. And I know we did build out a model of campus using Autodesk InfraWorks, and that was in 3D, but we had to overwrite some of the elevations that were missing within that.
Yeah, and we have been going through, actually fairly recently, we had a big project that installed chilled water. Let me turn on the chilled water here. They installed chilled water lines all the way across campus. So the majority of these chilled water lines are new, starting out here, running chilled water through the majority of campus. And as they did that, they actually documented the inverts and the pipe elevations of everything that they crossed. So we're currently going through and backfilling a lot of that data now. So if we turn on storm, for instance, fairly complete in this area. If I mouse over this pipe, it'll tell me the length of the pipe and the start invert level. And actually, owner becomes very important for us because we're surrounded by the city of Boulder. And in a few places, city of Boulder utility lines actually run through campus. So if we locate a city of Boulder utility line and then something happens to it, say we dig it up and we hit it with a backhoe, then we have to buy that utility line. So we spent a lot of effort really tracking who owns what pipe so that we make sure that we only locate our own pipes just for liability. And so you can see we've got a lot of these populated with owner and invert. So let's see. Yeah, there's a complete one. So that's when where they dug up both ends of it, and they could tell us that the start invert was there and the end invert. And we've got a lot of inverts on these manholes too. So we are backfilling a lot of that information.
Mhm.
But we've got about 100 years worth of infrastructure in the ground here, starting from clay pipe, and it was never very well documented. So it's really been a process of documenting things. You know, as soon as there's a hole dug, we try to document everything that's in there,
Mhm.
and move on from there.
Okay, let's see, a couple more questions. We've got to wrap up. We're run for the hour. Let's look. There's John Walker's asked a couple of questions. Do campus administrative officers, e.g. Class scheduling and faculty, use your building room plans? And maybe you can speak to that, Liz.
They do use our floor plans. They use PDF versions currently, which we publish for them. Whenever they're updated, we update those to a website that they have access to. But the class scheduling uses PeopleSoft, which I'm not especially familiar with. But we are currently doing a campus space study to look at what software we use for tracking and allocating space and for doing scheduling. So that's all kind of up in the air right now.
Okay, and then let's take the last question. How did you get legacy drawings, paper, into your system, and what's the format, JPEG or other, and how they link to the GIS? I think you actually showed that. I think that's what you're talking about under site plans.
Yes, a little bit. We don't have a lot in site plans yet. How we dealt with legacy drawings is even before my time, starting back, oh gosh, in the early 90s, the CAD office, which we're part of, started, they're basically the document library for the whole campus, and they had paper records for pretty much every project that had happened on campus since the 1890s. And they scanned all of that over the course of years into TIFF files, which were originally stored on CD-ROM. And then from there, we converted everything to PDFs in a file structure on a server here in the CAD office. And then from there, we've moved to the Meridian Document Management System, which is a very robust document management system. It's similar to a few other systems that are out there. And what that does is it lets us file each sheet of drawings with a whole set of attributes. Let me pull one up here. Let's find all documents. So this is Meridian Explorer. So we just found all the documents for this building. And everything that's filed in here as a PDF has a bunch of attributes attached to it. And the file name is really a concatenation of those attributes. So this one is an O&M manual for this building. It's got a description here. And let's go down and find some drawings. I could just do a filter. Let's just look for architectural search. So now I'm down to 117. So that's the power of having attributes on all of these documents, is that we can get to, some of our bigger buildings have upwards of 6,000 and 7,000 documents related to them. By filtering by the attributes, we can quickly get down to 100 drawings or 10 drawings that have what you're looking for on them, rather than flipping through hundreds of sheets.
So on the map now, somebody can go straight to what you've shown us now and get everything you have in your Meridian document management system in terms of documents on the map. What if you have data in the TIFF file as like in a site plan, and you need to get that into the GIS, like the storm pipe goes from here to here?
So that actually all gets drafted in. So how our project system works is we get submittals at various phases throughout the project. But our big submittal is what we call closeouts, or as-built drawings. So when we get as-built for a project, we go through and draft all of the information that is in the as-built drawings into our GIS. So that includes updating the base map, updating landscaping layers, updating utility layers, and updating all of their building floor plans, space data, and it'll eventually include our ADA accessibility based on the grade that they show. So basically, we try to backload all of that data processing onto the projects as they complete. At this time, we have not gone back and done all the legacy projects. We've tried to, say this is where we are at this point in time. We're going to collect everything moving forward and collect all the data from this point forward. And that's been pretty good for us, as there's so much construction on campus that eventually I think we'll touch every area.
So when a new plan comes in now, you'll pretty much put that in using Munsys. You'll put that into the spatial database, and then it'll be available both in Munsys as CAD stuff as well as in Enlighten here for whoever you've turned the layers on for.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to be mindful of the time, so I'm going to switch over and we can finish up. So let me just... Well, Liz, thanks very much for your time and walking us through and stopping for questions. I just want to let everyone get some information. If you need anything further, please if you want to have a discussion with any of us, schedule a meeting at gismadesimple.com, or you can go and look at the OpenSpatial, campus.openspatial.com for more information on our solutions and that sort of thing. Today's focus was on, what they've done and what they're using at UCB, and Liz did a great job of running through all of that, so I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.